Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Shatay, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze podcast, where we believe that healing and wholeness are not just destinations.
That's right. We believe they're a journey, and here on the Love Haze, we talk about how to navigate through it.
Absolutely. So today, we're excited, and I'm personally a little bit scared to be connected with our friends Liz and Ronaldo Wright.
Mm-hmm.
They are financial brokers with nearly 20 years in financial services. They are licensed in everything from mortgage loans to investments to insurance and more.
Everything.
They touch every aspect of money, y'all. And just to be honest, y'all can be all up in my business today. I've already told my friends that, the relationship that I've had with money growing up has been one that's kind of been rooted in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And as we always say, we're going to navigate this thing together and for real today. So welcome to our Black Love journey. Let's get right into this thing.
Nope. Okay, so as Scott said, really excited about this conversation. We've been trying to connect, right? It seemed like all summer, just schedules wouldn't allow. So I'm glad we're here now. Just for background to kind of set up why we're interested in this conversation. We have lots of conversations about like holistic healing, just every parts of our lives, wanting to be the most healed and whole versions of ourselves that we possibly can be. And what we haven't talked a lot about, we talk a lot about, like healing from traumas and processing like work and relationships and all that. We have not talked a lot, if at all, about money. And as Scott mentioned, it's something that comes up in our couples therapy. And in my life, I have read books like The Richest Man in Babylon or the Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, and really just understand that when it comes to money, it's really about your mindset and your relationship to it. And we try to have conversations like that. And Scotty mentioned that that's just not been his experience. His experience has been more about fear. So I'm super excited to just kind of unpack that, because I know that he's not the only person with that experience. Right. I think we have a whole community of folks that have had that experience. So if you could just start the conversation with telling us about like your nearly 20 years of experience with financial services. What y'all do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you said with the relationships that people have with money is kind of the reason we got started in this industry. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background for myself, I went to school for math and engineering, a full ride scholarship. So numbers and systems make complete sense to me. I think, none of that stuff is scarier. But money was, and it was because I grew up in a household where we didn't necessarily have a lot of money. We had integrity, there was good credit because my parents paid their bills on time and things like that. But we didn't recognize that there was a difference between trying to get rich and then also trying to get wealthy. That's two completely different things. And building wealth, it takes a different level of relationship, just like if you want to build a healthy, holistic relationship like you guys are talking about, it takes intentional behavior to get there. You're not going to just accidentally become wealthy.
Right.
I think so. When I got introduced to the financial services arena, I recognized that there was a big problem there. I recognized that we are not moving towards wealth. Even those of us who have gotten a measure of stability mistake that for being rich, and there's a big difference between being stable and being rich. So, if you're not even rich, wealth is far on the, so I turned down engineering positions that I had already had years of experience in through college, and starting off at almost a six-figure salary, company car, company gas car, like it would be an ideal job that people would love to have today. But I turned it down, like you said, almost 20 years ago, because I felt like there was a need here. Yeah. And for me, it matters more about the impact we're making than the money we're making, especially at that time. Now, the great thing is we make way more money now than I would have ever been paid on that engineering job.
Right.
But, I believe that's because we came here with the intentions of educating,
Right.
people about something that so many people have fear about, like what you're
Right.
talking about right now.
Right, absolutely. And when you speak of trauma, trying to move past some things, a lot of our issues with money is due to trauma through
Mm.
history. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
Black men who made money, they were a target to the white community for the white community. So it's all of those things that make us who we are today. But that's why we love what we do, because we make it so simple and so basic. You guys, we go to elementary schools and teach kids on how money works. That's how simple the things are. But
Wow.
the thing is, if we're not taught those things in our communities, we
Right.
never know. And so we end up creating, like I said, this snowball effect earlier, right? The snowball effect of debt, right? What are we passing down? Other communities, they're passing down wealth, they're passing down real estate, land.
Mhm.
But what are we truly passing down? Other
Mhm.
than,
Debt and memories.
and there are some
Mhm.
great things. Guess what? We we might sometimes be broke as a culture, but we're rich in culture too. We
Yeah.
have so much that we hand down in traditions and things like that. But we got to get our money where our culture is. Y'all know we are like flourishing our communities with culture, right?
Yeah.
People are biting us left and right, but are people really looking to us about money?
Y'all
No.
better come out the gate preaching. Okay.
You know what
Yes.
I'm saying? I mean, because that's just how I feel. It's just so close to my heart, y'all. Because I just feel like we just when we perish because we have lack of knowledge, and so that's one thing. That's where our heart is. That's why we do what we do. That's what we've always done. And like he said, it wasn't easy when he said, "I'm not going to be a 6-figure earning engineer." Y'all coming home, and we done just had a whole baby. You know what I'm saying? Coming home, and he's like, I want to change my community. Like, look, bro, you need to go ahead and be this engineer, okay?
Right.
But who would have thought, you know what I'm saying? This is what we've done. Our kids are familiar with what we do, and we have a business that we can hand down to them too. So not only the knowledge, but we can hand down something of substance and wealth.
Right.
That is beautiful. Can we
Yeah.
really quickly share? So you said there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. What's the difference?
You can lose rich and still be wealthy if you're wealthy. Like, see, understanding that. I always tell people you have a financial thermostat in your head,
Right.
and if you don't know that, that doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah.
It does mean, though, that if you didn't know it was there, you didn't set it.
Right.
So if there's a thermostat somewhere, like I look at our kids. So, we have kids that are, 4 kids under 18. And, from the 17-year-old, 14-year-old, 5-year-old, 3-year-old, we learn different things. I'm a 4-year-old now. His
Just turned
birthday was
4,
last
okay.
week, right?
Right.
We learn different things from watching them. But if I were to use my kids as an example, see, when we talk, we like to keep things real simple from an educational standpoint. And I use my kids in a lot of examples. And I say, if my 4-year-old walks into a house and the house is really hot, it's uncomfortable, it's muggy, it's just stuffy in the house, what's he gonna do? He may walk through and just be like, oh, he can tell something's not right. He's not comfortable, but he's not gonna be solution oriented because of his level of understanding. My 5-year-old might be more vocal, and she will come in and say, it's hot. Why is it so hot in here? He'll just feel uncomfortable and, move around. She'll start to say, because of her awareness level, she'll say, it's hot in here. My 14-year-old may walk into the same house and say, it's hot. We need to cut the temperature down. My 17-year-old will walk in, notice it's hot, and go to fix it, go to make the adjustment. So if you don't know, the 5-year-old, 4-year-old are not aware of what a thermostat is and does. So even though they're affected or their environment is affected by it, they're not aware that it's there to know that it's something they can change versus the 14-year-old and 17-year-old. So I think for us, teaching people that you have a financial thermostat, if you want to find out what it is, if you're on a regular paid schedule, just for example, you're a teacher, you get paid once a month. Pray for our teachers. If you, if you get paid biweekly or semi-monthly, however you're paid, if you look at your bank account, not at a time where you're saving for something specific, it'll be a little off when you're saving for something specific, because when you're saving for something specific, you unconsciously turn up the thermostat so that it can get you to the level you're supposed to be at. So if I'm about to buy a house, I save more money than I normally do. If I'm about to buy a car, I'm going to save more money. I'm about to go on this big vacation. I'm going to I'm going to reset the thermostat setting at that time. But if you're just in a normal, everyday, normal week, nothing's happening, I'm not about to buy anything, not saving for nothing specific. If you check your bank account within 48 hours of your next paycheck, like I'm about to get paid Friday, look at your bank account balance on Wednesday before every paycheck, Wednesday and Thursday. Your bank account balance will typically be around the same amount. That's your thermostat setting. So the crazy part is I can say that in an auditorium full of people. And I've seen people go on their phone and say, oh my God, because the reality is that's your level of comfort. What does a thermostat do? That thermostat, if it gets too hot, it's supposed to come on, create things that bring the temperature down. If it gets too cold, it's supposed to come on and create things that bring the temperature up, so that you're in a certain comfort zone when it comes to, you have one of those financially. And I tell people, I can give you a bunch of examples, but let me give you one everybody can relate to.
Familiar with.
You have this setting, and then you happen to hit the right lottery numbers, which turns the heat all the way up, right?
Right.
There are people who hit the lottery typically a few years later.
Broke or worse.
Because what happened was they didn't change the setting of their thermostat. So when all the money came in and it got extremely high, their body, that thermostat kicked in and they started doing things to bring the temperature back down to, it's not like, oh, I hit for 88 million. If I hit, that was just enough for what I needed. If I hit 89 million, I would have been fine. But no, no matter what the number is, because if you don't change that setting, you're going to come back to your comfort level.
Right.
That's real.
And that's a scary thing, because a lot of us we say we don't like where we are, but we actually are comfortable where we are. And that's why we don't change it.
Right.
That's real.
Intentional.
There's a whole TV show about people who won the lottery. I like watching those
shows.
I
do. It is.
And what they do with their money and where they end up. And I came across an article. I was scrolling through something recently and saw like this article about people who won the lottery and end up like dead, or like all this kind of tragic things happen because I don't know if they become targets, but basically they just mismanage all the things, and the lottery isn't the thing that actually saves them. That's real.
Because you be in a room that's too hot, you can die. The heat got turned up too much. It wasn't a level you were equipped to stay with.
Yeah, look, even your example, like thinking about growing up in my parents' house and the idea of the thermostat, and like your kids understanding it. It even, to me, it is it speaks to like the difference in like how you all are raising your kids as opposed to like how I was raised. In my mama's house, you could be 24 years old, don't touch her thermostat, right? But I think that's also how they raised us around money, right?
Yeah.
That's where that fear kind of developed for me. It was that like, not this, right? And it was this mentality of you always save. And my dad taught me like, it's okay to not have enough money. You need to be able to borrow some. So they passed down this idea of always being able to be in debt. And as long as you had good enough credit to get something, it was this idea of like, don't touch the thermostat, be able to borrow against. And kind of leading into that, I guess our next question is like, what does a healthy relationship with money look like?
Well, and I want to definitely start on this, point, and don't mistake, my wife and I are equally yoked. I mean, she has the licenses that I have, the understanding level, so me saying something first, I want to recognize that commas can be put in that question in a few different places that can change the meaning of that question completely. Like if you think about it, you could say, what does a healthy relationship with money look like? Some people may think, do you mean a healthy relationship between two people that have money? Or some people may not even recognize that you have a relationship with money. Specifically, you can be a single person but you have a relationship with money.
Right.
And think about the foundation that your relationship is built on with people. You know, if it started off a certain way or if it was built on a certain thing, it's not always easy to change, but you got to understand it's the same thing with money. So, Scott, when you're talking about in your household, you could be 24 years old, but you better not touch that thermostat. Is that, if from a feeling standpoint, does that give you a positive or a negative feeling when somebody gives you the feeling that you better not touch that thermostat, no matter how uncomfortable you are?
Right. It's negative for sure.
Yeah. So even little things like that are built into your base of how your relationship
Absolutely.
works with money, because they weren't telling you you better not touch that thermostat because they were comfortable. They were telling you better not touch that thermostat because it affected something that dealt with money.
Correct.
So you were already being foundationally set up to have a negative relationship with money from that, from the beginning. You may not think about it that way, but even from the sayings that we have, you hear people say money
Just
is
about to
the
say
root
that.
of, I won't even finish it because I don't believe that, and I'm not going to hold that. Money is not the root of all evil. And I can say, money, you hear people say money doesn't grow
On trees.
people can finish those sentences
Mhm.
without ever have met. They could have never met you before, but they can finish those sentences based on the experiences and things that have been programmed in them. See, we're reprogramming our kids. So when they hear money is the root of, they don't think what most people think. Money is the root of things that can give you options. Money is the
That
root
part.
of,
I love that.
the ability to be more. You know what I mean? Money is not the root of all, and money, so you just have to, when my kids see a penny on the ground, what do most people do? They'll just walk past, like it's, especially if it's dirty and it's in water or something, my kids will pick it up, and they've been taught to pick it up and say, I'm a money magnet. Money
Oh,
follows me everywhere I go. Money gives me options. Money, so
we need to
that,
be taking notes. Hold
Right.
on.
that's the thing. And so the funny thing is, we can go to a football game and my kids find quarters, dollars on the ground, just in the midst of stands where nobody is, and they have a program and they really believe money follows them everywhere they go. It's always around them. It's chasing them down. They have a great relationship with money.
Abundance,
Yeah, money is not scarce. We do not tell them not to do something because it costs money at all. We're like, hey, if the way we look at it, if money's the only thing that's stopping you from doing something, then go ahead and do it, because money shouldn't be a deciding factor. Now, the reality is you also should be smart about what you're doing so that you're not, creating a death with money type situation.
Right.
But at the same time, it should not be a negative thing. It should be a positive, here's why we're not going to do that. We may not go and buy something that, just because you can pay for something doesn't mean you can afford it. They understand that difference too. Just because you have the dollars to buy something does not mean you can afford to have that. My daughter's car is a very different car from my car. Why? Because my daughter's oil change is $20 something at the dealership. Like they go to the dealership, no side stuff. My regular maintenance on my car can easily be $1,000, but oil change $750. So it's understanding that there's a cost to buy and then there's a cost to own. And the difference is, just because let's say you got a Mercedes Benz, it may cost a close payment number from the beginning, like as far as the cost of the vehicle might be very close to, say, some form of a Honda. But the maintenance on that Benz versus that Honda is a completely different thing. They both might be $50,000 cars, but trust and believe, one of them is a different maintenance cost. So you got to understand that for everything.
To afford it, right? And sometimes we curse our money. You know what I'm saying? We curse money.
Sure.
And people don't realize, like, when they say there's like power in the tongue, there is so much power in our tongue. Like, we know as people, we are already powerful, right? But
Hmm.
what we say about our money and what we think about money, it really resides within us. And so, like, some people say, I don't need all that. Shh, I need it all. If it's
I want it all.
available, I want it all.
I want to run me
And I
mine.
can't have it all. And that
Yeah.
doesn't make, and that's another thing. People say, oh, they're just greedy. That's not
Mm.
true. Because if you have money and your heart is pure and your heart is good, all you're going to do is pour back and give back in such great ways.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I know there's organizations people would love to bless. I know there's a check that needs to be written for somebody who needs a certain procedure done that's not covered by insurance. So money provides the options, like he says, but a lot of times we curse it because we think, oh, I don't need all that. You know what I'm saying? Greedy people need all that. So immediately we think it negatively. But if we absorb those positive thoughts, like, money gives me options. It follows me down. I have an abundance of money. You know what I'm saying? And not feeling like I need to hoard my money.
Right.
Mm.
A lot of people, they will hoard their money, and it kind of like creates this stunt in their money growth because they
Yeah.
don't feel like they'll get more. You know that song, write a check and get it right back?
Mm.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not sure if it was done in the context of like what we talk about,
Right.
but if we really have that mentality where we don't stunt our money growth because we're thinking, if I give this away, I'm not going to get any more.
Yeah.
You know, that's another thing, a flow of money. And I know Ronaldo probably going to talk about that,
Yeah,
having a cash
cash.
flow.
It's
Yeah,
called cash flow for a
Right.
reason. Like a lot of
Mhm.
people think, if I have some money, if I sit it here and I save it. Well,
Mhm.
saving and investing is two completely different things. You
Right.
can
Right.
save money, sit it somewhere, but I want you to think about if you have some water in nature and it's just sitting still. That water over time is not getting to a better place, let me say, if you will. The cleaner water is water that has been flowing over things that are filtering it, like rocks and things like. So that's how you get more purified water, because it is moving, it's flowing. That's also why they call it cash flow. It's not supposed to sit still. If you have too much money sitting, understand this. Here's a principle that you should learn about money. Money is always working. 100% of the time, money is always working, but it may not be working for you. See, if you take your money and sit it, say, in a bank and just let it sit in a savings account, it's working, but it's working for the
Not
bank.
for you.
It's
For the
not
bank.
working for you.
Yeah.
So you have to learn and be very aware that if I want money working for me, I have to hire it. I have to put it to work myself. Otherwise, it will be hired by somebody else.
Right. And that's why they say money doesn't sleep. Money doesn't take
Yeah,
breaks.
it doesn't.
Right.
They don't take long lunches. Money don't do that. So that's kind of where that comes in at too.
Mhm.
So I feel like we're in a masterclass, and this is so amazing. I feel so inspired. I really want to get a pen and write down a lot of things that you're saying. I really love that the money's always working. I love what you're teaching your kids around. I'm a money magnet, and money follows me wherever I go. That brings me to a thought. You were saying you can curse money, but how we talk about it is so, so, so important. And what I hear a lot from our communities are, I'm broke. I don't have money for that. The I'm broke affirmation really just it hurts my ears, because
Affirmation.
that is not, it's if people would really understand what they're saying, what they're affirming, or I don't have no money. So I don't hear a lot of I'm broke anymore, but it's like I don't have any money, or my kids take all my money, or you know what I mean? Like there's this constant affirmation of lack. Constant affirmation of lack. Or if we are stable, because I don't feel that we're rich, and maybe we should talk about how can we quantify what rich and wealthy is. But if we're stable, family being like, well, y'all are rich. And I always accept the affirmation, like, yes, I receive it. But what they're saying is your experience, I'm not at that level. And I don't even think that they understand that they're othering themselves from that abundance.
Separating,
Yes.
right.
Think about even the relationship you all have, like with people. I say, think about if you thought about money as a person you were in a relationship with, would the person you were in a relationship with want to stay with you if you treated them the way you treat money?
Money.
Like, think about how, like what Liz just said, oh, I don't need all that. think about if you overheard Scott talking to somebody and they were talking about how amazing you treated him and how you did things for him that made them see how much you loved him. And then you overheard him because he don't think you listening. You overhear him saying, "Oh, I don't need all that." See how that would make you feel as a person. So but here's the thing, you got to treat money like it's a person that's always listening to you. So how because if you have that negative feeling towards it, then why would it want to stay around you?
Wow.
That's the whole sermon.
Right.
That's a whole word right there.
I need all that.
That was good. That was really good. So how do we begin to address it? I guess we always ask what's the haze of that? I guess maybe we'll start there. What do you think is the difficulty? Why aren't people able to do that? What's the haze in treating money better or having a better relationship with money?
To be honest, there's now when I say ignorance, I want to understand ignorance means not knowing.
Right.
There's a difference between ignorance and stupidity. But there's, stupidity is knowing, but still, right? But, our training level deals with ignorance. Stupidity is a whole, that's like a different level of training.
You don't have training for that, right?
I don't have that license. So my goal is to make sure people get aware of saying, like, if we bring it to your awareness, it's up to you to make the changes and adjustments,
Right.
But,
to make the changes.
yeah, so I think the haze, if, to go on what you're saying, the haze comes in because of there's a gray area of ignorance when it comes to money. And what I mean by that is people are very clear that they need money to pay for things, right? There's no haze in that. But the haze comes with the understanding of how money works. See, if you are not fully aware of how it works, what is true, what are facts, what are principles that deal with how money works, then you can listen to someone who has some agenda or some level of training that only comes from a specific company. And because that company has to hit quotas or, pays a commission level at a difference depending on the product being sold, then you can listen to somebody whose intention is to get the quota hit or the commission check as big as possible, they can play around in that gray area of ignorance that they know you have, and they can make something sound true that's not the whole truth. I mean, if you think about if you go to court or if you've seen a court show, when they say put your hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, what do they tell you to do? They say you have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, because people are such good liars. People can give misinformation in such a good way that they have to be very clear that they want the truth, but they want the whole truth. So don't omit things that are important that make this truth so that it can sound the way that's better for you, and nothing but the truth, which means don't add anything in that could try to make what is true seem like what you're trying to sell. So we have so much ignorance in our community when it comes to how money works, that there's a lot of gray area that companies and people take advantage of.
Right.
And I always say, before you take advice for somebody dealing with your money, you need to find out whether or not that person qualifies to give that advice. Do they have the lifestyle you would want? Like, would you want, like, ideally, are they where you're trying to go? Or do they have any formal training or licenses that give them the authority to give, advice in that area? You know what I mean? It's a lot of social media people out here that are giving advice they not qualified to give.
Yeah.
And that gray area, my gray area is very thin. So if you say something that don't make sense because of our level of understanding, that doesn't make sense, and we can back it up with evidence as to why. But if your gray area is very big, which most of us grow up in an area with a huge gray area, it's easy to go down the wrong road and try to justify it.
Right.
That it brings to mind, we had an experience with a financial advisor a couple of years ago. It was someone who was referred to us, And I believe in referrals and testimonials, and I believe in social proof. And so I don't ever like kind of go find someone that like off the internet, for example. But if someone that folks we know use, and they weren't, they were a person of color, but they weren't Black. And so I spent my time saying, hey, like, this is, when you're approaching folks in the Black community, like you got to be a little bit different. And I'm trying to like, our history with money is different, you know? And so
Yes.
even after saying all of that, I think I intimidated them a little bit. But even after saying all of that, and even after I shared with them what our goals were and what we were hoping to accomplish by having this relationship with them, they still proceeded to sell us on, what was it? Long-term something? What was it?
I don't know.
Some insurance.
She was bad.
And then they sold us on this thing, and then we didn't hear from them for however long. And it was me reaching out saying, hey, we're still here. Do we want to continue the conversation? We have these other goals. And then finally I was like, I'm not paying for this because we don't have the relationship that we're looking for. And what you've sold us actually doesn't feel energetically aligned with what I'm trying to accomplish.
Good.
So I understand the need for this. I understand what you're saying, but this doesn't even feel right for us. And so there's this whole other, I guess, to your point, Ronaldo, like, how can we touch on this a little bit? Like, how do you find folks that you can trust? Like, it's already an act of vulnerability to even engage in this, to trust somebody enough you're letting them in on all your finances, what you make. Like, that's scary enough.
Yes.
But then to trust, I hear you saying ask more questions, take a look, but like, can we speak a little bit about like making it, I guess, normalizing that it's okay to even trust folks enough to engage on that journey with them?
Absolutely. I think it's commendable that you all were searching for help in that area, whereas a lot of people try to guess their way through, and understand the system with money that we live in is designed to move you in the wrong direction until you have the right information. So it doesn't matter what company it is. It doesn't matter. Like, you will think your way through, and now you may have a slow building pain, but you're still going to be moving the wrong direction until you have the right information. I think that what you said, though, there's a few teachable things in what you said, and trusting yourself. Like, you felt like that. You didn't say somebody came and showed me in a book where it said that you should. No, it's like I felt like what I was getting didn't align with what I. Listen, there's so many. There's such a teachable thing in that alone.
Right.
How many times have part of the programming that we get is, even though it don't feel right, just do it anyway because they say it. That's part of our training. We have to get out of that. I'll tell you in a minute. There's only two reasons when you're dealing with a financial person. Like, if the person's a financial person, they're licensed, they know what they're able to sell you product. If you walk away from a relationship starting and you don't fully understand what you're doing and why you're doing it that way, there's only one of two problems that have happened. Either one, that person doesn't want to teach you well enough for you to understand it, because then you wouldn't want what they were trying to sell you. That's one, because that means they have an integrity issue, right? Or the second one is a knowledge-based issue. Maybe they don't understand it well enough to know how to get you to understand what they're selling. And for me, if you have either one of those two issues, you can't deal with my money, because I need somebody who understands it and has integrity. So if we can't get a clear understanding as to what we're doing and why, I don't care how good you or who you said does it. And, it's crazy because I see all these people. The funny thing, a running joke with us is you hear people on social media saying stuff like, oh, here's what rich people do. And I would say the funny thing is, rich people don't talk like that. So if you hear a person saying, here's what rich people do, you have already identified yourself as a non-rich person.
Right. The millionaire next door, right? Like, you don't even know it. You don't even know it.
And what we have to think about too is when you're speaking with anybody in financial services, they should definitely be there to speak with you, but do a lot of more listening than telling. So it's almost like you're a counselor, right? Or a therapist. You have to do a lot of listening. And so if they're not doing a lot of listening to what your needs and goals and desires are, that's a red flag. Okay. And if they're not, like Ronaldo said, they're not clear about those things, why we're doing this, why we're putting you in this product because of this, whatever position you want to be in later in life, whatever that case may be. If they're not clear upon those things, and nor are they clear or wanting to be clear when you ask them questions, because a lot of people feel challenged when you ask them questions. They should never feel challenged. When someone asks me a question, we believe that all they're saying is, I just need to know more.
Yeah, that's it.
And so a lot of people feel challenged when they're questioned, and so that can cause a lot of this in a sit down situation. But that's definitely a red flag. If they're not doing all the listening, right, and they don't make it clear, like, this is why I'm putting you here because you said this, and that, and the third, then that's a problem, and so you knew that from the jump. And that's why, I just congratulate you, because a lot of people will say, oh, I'm paying for something, but I don't remember. I don't know what it is. I don't even know how much it is. And I'm just like, we got to wake up. We can't have money going out and we don't know what the purpose is for.
Yeah, this is for something to build wealth for your family and supposed to go to the next generation, but you can't explain
it. We got to know, right?
Why do you normally make it a practice of paying for something regularly that you don't know, that you don't understand? Like, we only do that.
Right.
That was bananas. And that lady started calling so much after Shantae said that she didn't want to continue to pay for it. She was on the hotline bling.
Yeah. And I had given her the tools. I said, I'm expecting that we develop a relationship, a rapport. So to me, that meant that you would at least be checking in, like, how are things? How are you feeling about it? It was like crickets until it's time for you to reassess how much we're making so that you can sell us something different. I don't want that. Like, I don't. Child, just got to re-trigger all of
Listen, I definitely got some points I got to talk to my therapist about that Ronaldo brought up about how I learned, about the temperature and all those things. So I pointed out all the things and got me all in my feelings.
No, it's good. Like, this is good.
Yeah, but I think it's important to be able to just, that's a part of what healing is about, being able to identify, like, I believe that I have an unhealthy relationship with money.
But I think what will probably be really helpful for him is, like, he is exceptional with relationship with people. So, like, just that illustration or, that idea that if you approach your relationship with money like you do with people, I think could be really, it's like game changing for you for sure. Because he's great with people. That's your superpower.
So what's the biggest lesson, I think, to be learned around this topic from you guys' perspective?
What would you say? Biggest lesson?
That you've learned even yourself.
I think that, for me, one of the biggest lessons would be to give yourself a break, and understand that people are where they are because of the decisions they make. And the decisions they make are based on how they think. So don't, like, if my 4-year-old or 5-year-old needs to get ready, for school, and let's say the 4-year-old runs into the restroom and, goes number 2, right? He may not be wiping himself, right? You get what I'm so, or let's say that he has to go, and I know it's a weird illustration.
He always uses our children, guys.
Or am I, because I look at people in relationship the same way. Like, if my 4-year-old is like, we're trying to get them ready for school, and he runs and he's got to put his shoes on, but hasn't yet, we're in a hurry and he can't pick his clothes out yet and that kind of stuff. I'm going to respond to him running into my room while I'm getting dressed saying, hey, Dad, I need help to get ready. I'm going to respond completely different if my 17-year-old comes in and says, I need help getting ready. You get what I mean? So I think giving yourself a break and understanding that if you're just getting started in your relationship with money and you're even understanding that there is one, then don't expect yourself to be able to handle high school challenges with an elementary school level of understanding yet, And but to seek help from professionals that are willing to educate you. You know what I mean? I believe in paying professionals to do what professionals do. I don't do my own taxes. I don't do,
Mhm.
pay people that are but if you are gonna do business with people, make sure they can educate you in that area.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna just trust that you do it because you have a license for that. I want you to, if you can't teach me why this makes sense in a way where I can explain it when you're not there, then I don't know that I can trust what you're saying,
Right.
in that
Right.
way.
And my greatest, like, really is the biggest killer of wealth in our community is debt.
Mm.
Because we've grown up in a society much different from our grandparents where they saved, right? They
Mhm.
saved whatever they needed to get, they saved and they paid cash for it. And part of that was because of the financial services industry in our communities, right? You had companies that just started insuring Black lives, like for
Mhm.
us, right? In
Right.
the 70s, in the 60s. So it's a lot of things that we had to do different, but we should still incorporate those things that they did back then as far as saving versus having microwave, that microwave goal. Like, I just want to get
Mhm.
it real quick. The
Right
debt
now.
is what's killing us right now
And
because it's stopping us from being able to save money. But I'm
I
sorry.
do want to say that's part of an identifier as well. When
Mhm.
you say, well, what's the difference between being stable, being rich, and then rich
Mhm.
versus wealthy? Well, your understanding of how things are used. All right.
Mhm.
Because debt to a poor person
Right.
is detrimental.
Mhm.
Debt to somebody moving into the middle class can be
Borderline.
favorable tax wise, but it can also pull money out of the house.
Mhm.
When you get into that rich, wealthy area, debt can be used to make money. So you have to understand where you are in that spectrum.
Right, because people will use rich people or wealthy
Mhm.
people's products and services and things that they do in their lane. And unfortunately,
That's
those
not your
things
lane
won't
yet.
work with you yet.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You got to graduate
Their
to those
loss,
things. Yeah.
their tax loss is a protection and keeper of money. Whereas for you, you need to be keeping all the money you can
Right.
without that.
I'm glad you said that because that was going to be my very next question because you always hear about rich people saying like use other people's money. And so to them, they use, debt and somehow are able to write it off or recoup it or
Mhm.
whatever. And so
Absolutely.
there is this a confusing, I guess, dialogue around debt, good debt, bad debt, and all of that. And so it's just, it's
That's the gray
complicated.
area. When I talk
Yeah.
about that gray area,
Mhm.
that gray area is
Right.
pretty wide.
That makes you
And
say, I don't know.
the key is you can be in the middle class and moving towards wealth. And even though you're not wealthy yet, the certain types of debt can be used to move you forward. So, for example, as a homeowner, you can be in a position where the equity in your home looks one way, but you can use that equity to eliminate some bad debt and turn it into good debt.
Mhm.
And then, into a more, and then it puts you in a position of ownership with those assets instead of just being a debtor, if you will.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
those debts, then that house debt gives you a favorable tax position. It gives you, money is working for you in that sense because the equity is growing in your home
Mm.
statistically. And, things like that can work in your favor. So when you go and present yourself as a person who desires someone else's money, whether it's a
Mhm.
bank,
Mhm.
an insurance company, or whatever, you look like a better risk because you have good debt that you have been
Versus a lot
paying
of
in a
bad
certain
debt.
way
Yeah.
versus a bunch of bad debt. See, that's another thing. You could have $400,000 worth of debt, but if it's $400,000 worth of debt where it's a few cars, a bunch of credit cards, and you got a little personal loan, that's a completely different look from somebody who also has $400,000 worth of real estate debt. That's
Mm.
a
Mm.
that's a completely different position when the bank looks at you as a risk from a risk profile standpoint.
Right.
So you got
Wow.
to understand that
Right.
because you're depending on how the debt is positioned, it can be collateralized debt versus something that is
Right.
appreciating versus something that's depreciating, and you're basically just bleeding.
Right.
over time.
I love that. I gotta ask one more question. So your your illustrations are really, really helpful. Can you paint us a picture of what someone who's rich looks like, what their experiences are, versus someone who is wealthy? What does their experience and look like? Like, who are they?
Ooh, so many different like
To
what
me, wealthy is you living off of your margins. Like your dividend
Ah,
check is
okay,
coming
okay, I
off
got
of
you.
your money. You know, your money is working so hard, you don't gotta work. You know what I'm saying? Of course, we work because we might have a passion for what we do, but if you're getting a dividend check off of your investments every single month,
yeah,
And that's how you
building
live.
building
yeah,
to put it in a easily understandable
yeah,
way where you can say, are we moving the right direction or are we not?
Mhm. Mhm.
Is the money that you live off of, just like what Liz was just talking about, the money that pays for the expenses that you have that you've
Mhm.
created, right? Are the expenses being paid
right.
from earned income
Mm,
or are they being paid from unearned
right.
income? That's two different things. See, if you are moving towards wealth, what you're doing is you're taking the earned income, the money you had to go do something to make, you're taking that earned income and putting it in a place, sometimes a place of debt. Sometimes you're creating debt that's really creating money, whole different level of conversation. But you'll sometimes take that money that you have earned
Mhm.
and put it into a place where it will create unearned income. And
Gotcha.
when you're in a position where the unearned income, the residual income, the passive income, I'm giving you language that you can
Mhm.
understand from reading a 101 book. You don't have to have a high level on it. That's, easy breezy. I'm just getting started. Passive income, residual income, those kind of
Unearned
things
income.
are what you hear. When you're residual or passive or unearned income can
Mhm.
take care of your quality of life
Right.
and can outrun inflation at the same time,
Mm.
then you're financially independent already. Even if you're not, you don't have to be rich to be financially independent, nor do you have to be wealthy to be financially independent. But financially independent puts you in a place where you don't have the worries anymore. Like we're
Right.
not worried about our
Mhm.
bills going to get paid. I'm
Right.
not worried about are we going to be able to handle this or that. But when you have enough passive unearned income that it
All right.
produces so much income that it allows you to not just be not worried about paying bills, but it is enough that it can also be invested to produce unearned income and give you the quality of life and allow you to travel and let you take care of other people. That's
Right.
when
Yeah.
you know you're moving into that rich realm,
Mhm.
right? Now, wealth comes in the arena of your money is now being used by other people.
Mm.
Understand?
Mhm.
Banks come to you and say, hey, we
Yeah.
don't have
Mhm.
enough money on hand
Mhm.
to handle the
Right.
whatever is being done.
Yeah.
And you lend the bank money. You know,
Ooh,
there's a difference. You get what I mean? Like
that's
when
a whole other mindset that I'm
yeah,
like, how do you even get to that level of thinking?
absolutely. Well, you definitely don't accidentally run across it. Some
Yeah.
people you know,
Right.
you gotta, and there's levels of understanding that are required for you to go to the next level. Just the same with the kids. My 4-year-old is smart as a whip. Like he'll tell you and say stuff and understand stuff that you'll be like, how does he understand that at 4 years old? But even though he's impressively smart at the age of 4, we would really hurt him emotionally and everything if we stuck him in our 17-year-old senior who's a senior in high school.
Mhm.
If we stuck him in her class because we think he's smart
Right.
or because he shows up as being accelerated at his level, we can put him in a position where him being in there can start to create a doubt in him because he's
Mm.
not at their level yet. And it doesn't mean that
Right.
he won't be when he gets there, but
Wow.
there's certain growth that has to happen through elementary school first and then through middle school and then
High
so
school.
if you mess around and jump into a high school class when you're in preschool, then you can also create a negative connotation on what money
Mhm.
you know, what money looks like and how it is. If you're at your level and excel, great, but don't jump yourself out there too far in the deep end and you can't swim, you know,
Mm.
because
That's right.
you'll find out real quick it's some vultures and some sharks out there that'll come get
Right.
it quick. They
Right.
smell that blood. All
Right.
right.
That's real. That's real.
Well,
So good.
it's just been an eye-opening, amazing conversation.
Mhm,
Much less scared than I was.
mhm.
Right. I was gonna say, Scott, we did good. We, you know,
All right, I didn't run away yet. I ain't leave Stay sitting over here by herself. But there's two things I want to do. We always do this portion where we do music for the moment, and because we have a playlist and we want to know kind of what this feels like. But I also, after we do music for the moment, want to kind of know like how folks can reach out to y'all and get kind of a list of all the financial services that you provide. So we'll do our music for the moment.
Mhm.
And so what is this? What is the music for the moment for y'all? What does this feel like for y'all?
So I'm a like my music changes over time depending on what's going on, where we are, what we're doing, because we're constantly moving. I was on the taking the kids to school the other day, like a week or so ago, and my 4-year-old, the Travis, he says, "Dad, I want to hear 'Bless Me.'" Right? This is a song that it's called "Bless Me," and that song, it's his that's his jam. That's what he want to hear,
Yeah.
right? And my 5-year-old too, they love it, right? So we literally started playing that song. We played it over and over on that way to school that day. And while I was listening to it, I was like, man, it was just hitting in a different way. And when I'm saying bless me, it's not from a selfish standpoint that you're thinking about it, because the concept behind the song, or that's exist in the song, the way I see it, is it saying bless me so that everyone around me can have everything they
Mm.
need. Bless me so that all the folks that's with me can have everything they need. So it for me comes from a pure standpoint of, I don't want to just be sitting like the high horse on the whatever,
Yeah.
but it's like, man, I want to be in a position where when the people around me need something, they got it because I got it. You know what I mean? And I think that you listen to stuff different when your 4 and 5-year-old are listening to the same thing. So I think it opened my ear in a way of like, what are they hearing and how could this affect them foundationally? See, I'm thinking like that, like foundationally, what are we setting them up for in their thought process? And I loved every bit of what I was hearing. So I have literally not been able to cut that song off in my car for the last from that day. Like it's been on repeat. I tried to cut something else on. I was like, I want to hear that right now. And literally cut that back on.
Yeah, because normally he would give you, some Jay-Z,
Oh, yeah.
something, you know what I'm saying?
Jay-Z did have a song before. There's an old on Reasonable Doubt. All right, so y'all know how far back that is with Jay-Z. Jay-Z said, when everyone in your clique is rich, your clique is rugged. No one would fall because everyone could be each other's crutches. And that is the same principle as bless me so that everyone around me can have everything they need. It's two different genres, but same message for me. That's the way I hear it.
With a band.
Yes, that reminds me of Boss, the Carters. And that was like my theme song for 2020. But in Jay-Z's lyrics, at the end of that, he says something. He alludes to that, like we say you're broke if everybody around you is broke too, or if everyone next to you is broke too, or something like that. There's part of that line, and he's kind of talking about the same thing. You had a song, babe. What was yours?
I'm glad y'all brought some Jay-Z in because I'm about to feel ratchet. So my song is Rick Ross, Richer Than I Ever Been.
Oh, yes. I love that song.
Man, and especially with this conversation, because I'm just thinking about this feeling that, I'm kind of getting my spiritual together, getting my emotional, my mental, but just the idea of leaning into our whole self and having this conversation and even feeling freed, by that, I just feel richer than I've ever been. You know what I'm saying? Just by the idea of okay, finances is starting to make sense. I don't have to hide that part of myself.
Mhm.
Like that's something that we can do.
Yeah.
I'm richer than I ever
Powerful.
been, son.
Yeah, and he even says like
Hey.
you woke up today, you're already richer than you ever been. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Just like the idea of richness not necessarily just being financial. It's like
Yeah,
abundant in
absolutely.
every area,
Mhm.
in your health, in your
Yeah.
mind, in your
Your
love, in your
relationships.
relationships.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we tell people all the time, before you're broke in your pocket, you're broke mentally first. The same way,
Yeah.
before you can ever get rich in your pocket, you have to be rich mentally
Yep.
because
Mhm.
they have different behaviors. You know what I mean? The behaviors are different, which create the result.
Right.
Yeah. And I want both of them. I want
Yeah.
to be, sometimes people use that as an excuse to not have money. Like, well, I
Right.
may not be rich in money, but I'm rich in relationships. So I want all of
I
it.
want it all. Right?
Right. It's all available.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
I want
available.
all of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm here for it.
So give us just a quick rundown, if you can, of all of the financial services that you guys offer and how folks can get in touch with you.
Even if it's
Absolutely.
just email works, and we can always just link y'all on our website too.
Gotcha. Okay. So we'll get the
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 website.
email that the right
Okay.
to 11. But the I would say, well, from a what we're capable of, what we have training for, license for, we deal with everything from financial planning. You know, we are Series SIE Series 6, 63, 26. You know, if a bank can do it, we can do it pretty much.
Right.
The as a broker, we have the licenses to help people build wealth from a long term standpoint. You know, I'm not as much um, focused on the short term planning side. You know, where it's more higher risk, those kind of things. My goal is to get everybody into a position where they can be on autopilot towards
Mm.
rich and wealth. So that takes a more long term approach, which is why I like to specialize in that area of investing. You know, so it's more of a long term investment type aspect. We help people, of course, with debt elimination when debt elimination is necessary. You know, let me clarify that, because
Right.
debt elimination is not always necessary, even if you have debt. But we also are insurance licensed. So not only do we have life and health insurance licenses, we also are PNC licensed.
Right.
We also are mortgage loan originators. So we have the ability to help people get purchase homes and refinance homes and things. So our level of understanding goes from a foundation of math and engineering, so numbers and systems, to having licenses that take us across the gamut. So you can't trick us with anything dealing with money and
Right.
you know those things. So
Yeah.
that's where our foundation is. But we have those licenses and of course annuities and you know the different arenas of wealth preservation. You know,
Right.
so there's things that help you build wealth. We have license for those, but we also have licenses that help you preserve wealth as well. So
because you got to keep it so you
yeah,
can hand it down.
Mhm.
You know, so we work
exactly.
with that as well.
Yep. So we help in all those areas and
Right. And business owners having
yeah.
401k, 403b, those types of
Yeah,
things.
we help
And then
businesses as well as
yes,
individuals. So
those things, because entrepreneurs, I love the entrepreneur spirit that's coming out right now,
yes.
but everybody has to have an exit plan. I know you don't want to do this
Mhm.
till you die, right? So
Right.
we don't have companies that are giving us pensions and 401ks. Guess what? You got to do it.
Yep.
And so just finding that exit plan, getting that together, you know, making sure that you have, like you talked about, all the services. We do so much. It's a long list. So we're going to provide like our email and stuff, because anything anybody comes out with us, we'll most likely we'll be able to provide that, and especially ask any other questions that people have.
And we'll also tell you if we don't, but we
Right.
also can let you know where you may be able to get to a trustable, credible place where that can, you know, be handled for you. 'Cause we don't do everything. You know, at the same time, we do know sometimes where to tell you not to go.
Yeah.
You know, there's some
Right.
very recognizable names that you would run from if you
Right.
knew how they really worked.
Right.
We'll have to offline about that, yeah.
Already thinking.
Absolutely. So what I'll do is there's a email, the email that you created. You want to use that one or you want to use I'll give my let's just say I'll give you my Gmail,
Okay.
and that one is RANAULDOW at gmail.com, which is Ronaldo W at gmail.com. It's spelled just like it's shown up here. RANAULDOW at gmail.com. My wife's social media handle probably is a good one.
No,
she's
it is
always
my
entertaining the
social.
world.
Okay, I'm working on the business side, y'all. I am social media. Okay, so they're laughing because they know I'm on TikTok. They know I'm on those things, but I'm not using those for business yet. But we're working on that. You know, we're all a work in progress.
We have to, honestly, you know, we've been entrepreneurs and been in business long before social media became a thing.
Right.
And we've been just kind of working so hard to get information out to people that we haven't really taken the time to like build that social media aspect. So we, again, pay the professionals to do what the professionals do. So we're going to find somebody to help us, you know, kind of get those areas shored up, because I think that that's also something that the enemy could be using to hold our people back, you know, because you have people that are very capable of helping not just you get stuff, but you get an understanding of what you're doing. And if you don't know how to reach them, that's another crutch, you know, another handicap. So
it's been a pleasure and an honor to be on here with you guys, that you guys saw us fit to bless you guys' community, because I feel like you guys are truly blessing people with conversation about things that are really things that people are on, things that are on people's mind right now. You know what I'm saying? Especially following the pandemic, people are really trying to tune into what really matters. And to make sure that you're your whole self and you're bringing your whole self into your relationship to do something special. And so I'm excited for you guys too.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. These are conversations that we just have with each other. And so we were like, you know what, we should just let everybody hear what we're talking about, because somebody is thinking about the same thing, to your point. So thank you so much. We feel so blessed to be in relationship with y'all. Like, this conversation has been just everything, exactly the kind of conversations we love to have. Anything else you want to add before I close this out, babe?
Nah, man, just that I love y'all, man. And
we love y'all too.
and it really is about like having that love and that trust and that relationship, you know, with people that you feel like you can trust. So, you know, I'm just, God has just done such a wonderful job of positioning us and putting us in spaces where we could develop relationships, and he knows what we need, you know.
It's so weird how we are literally thinking the same thing. It's scary how we think the same thing at the same time. As y'all were talking, I was thinking like, God really outdid himself, like putting us the way that we met the Thompsons. And I was like, that relationship just keeps on giving for us to have like been fortunate enough to like meet y'all and connect and have this conversation and just kind of be what we need when we need it. Like, that is just blows my mind that is even the universe conspired to make that happen. That's why it's just beautiful.
You're that special.
Yeah.
What wouldn't you do for your kids, right?
Amen. Well, if you are joining from YouTube, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. You'll get notifications whenever we drop new episodes. And if you're listening from Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts, please rate and follow us. Keep the conversation going and share with your friends as well. And like we always say, life will always present you with a haze, but you have everything you need within you to navigate through it.
That's right. And as you can see, you're not alone. So, you know, join us. We're going to take this journey together. We appreciate y'all joining us this time. Hope that you'll join us again next time and every time. And we're going to get it done. That's our time, y'all. Peace, y'all.
All right.